so when you turn it off, I was instructed that I would take questions for a couple minutes. So I'm doing what the director over here said I should do. What did y'all think?
Very good.
Did you get a part that we're trying to
Yes.
get Americans to understand?
You have plenty of copies?
I don't know if we even have copies here.
We do.
We do, okay, we do have copies. It shows you how little I know. If you go to Gingrich Productions, let me just say it for a second, because it'll help you better understand what we've been trying to do. We have been in a process over the last 6 or 7 years of laying out a cultural view of America as it historically evolved. We started with a movie and a book called Rediscovering God in America, which is really, I think, a remarkable book, because it carried in the movies remarkable, because you can't see it and not understand on a purely factual basis that these judges who are, which I'm going to give a speech on this Friday, these judges who are anti-religious are in effect anti-American. I mean, they're simply repudiating the core values of the entire civilization. Then we developed a movie called We Have the Power, which was in response to $4 gasoline, and linked into drill here, drill now, pay less, and worked in 2008, actually drove down prices and caused a change in government policy, which then was reversed. We then, we've also done a movie on Ronald Reagan called Rendezvous with Destiny, which is very cool, partly because if you put Ronald Reagan on the screen for 90 minutes, he's really good. And we don't mess it up too much. But it also has a great moment, about 3 minutes of Jimmy Carter. And it just reminds you, I was asked to see him with one of the reporters about the president having said that he's the underdog, which is his thing yesterday. And it's so Carter-esque. I mean, you may remember Jimmy gave this malaise speech in which he basically said, you know, the future's bleak, we're all going to be miserable, but at least we can share the misery equally. Sort of a redistribution of misery as a all. And the country, of course, thought, no, we'll just fire you. It's so much easier than dealing with misery. You know, and the country was turning around. And then we did what I think is our best movie, which is 9 Days That Changed the World, which is really about Pope John Paul II going to Poland in 1979 for 9 days. And it is just an extraordinary film. I mean, the emotional power of it is unbelievable. The Polish people were mobilized, solidarity grew out of his trip, and the Soviet Union began to collapse. It's an astonishing movie. And then finally, we did a movie called America at Risk, which actually relates directly to the killing of Alawi. And I do a newsletter every Wednesday that comes out for free, and you can get it at GingrichProductions.com. You can sign up for it. Tomorrow, it says, you know, Obama gets one right. And it walks through the legalisms that basically say, if you decide you're at war with the United States, you lose all your civil liberties, and you are vulnerable to being killed. There's about 90 seconds or 2 minutes, I guess, of Alawi in the movie. And when you see it, then there's a long section on the Fort Hood terrorists who killed 13 Americans and wounded 33. And when you see it, you would have zero doubt that the president did the right thing in authorizing his killing. Anyway, that gives you a flavor of what we've been working on. This was our most recent film. And as I said, Fidner wrote some questions or comments or whatever. Yes, sir.
I just wanted to say that you're probably familiar with the person I'm going to mention here in a moment. That 15 generations ago, my grandfather was Reverend John Robinson, and he'd be happy with what you're doing.
Okay.
I'd just like to say.
You should tell the rest of Reverend John Robinson.
Reverend John Robinson is the pastor of the Pilgrims. My wife is related to Paul Revere.
So we have a genuinely colonial family, right?
Oh, yes.
Okay, that's great, thank you. Other, yes, the back.
Mr. Speaker, the other day, I think I might have this quote a little bit wrong with former President Clinton, quoted as saying, never in the history of the world has an anti-government agenda brought prosperity to the world. I think you need to show them this film.
We should send a copy of the bill, let me do it. Good idea, all right? Yes, sir.
Mr. Speaker, if you had to point out one thing about the current president that you would want to drive home to the American people, what would that be?
If there was one thing with the current president I would want to drive home to the American people, what would that be? Oh, so hard. No, the thing I say that is, I think, the definitive explanation of his failure is that he is the best food stamp president in American history. He has killed more jobs and put more people in food stamps than any other president in American history, and that I would like to be the best paycheck president in American history. And you can go into any neighborhood of any ethnic background in this country and ask people, would you rather your children had food stamps or paychecks? And overwhelmingly, they'll tell you they'd rather have a paycheck. And I think that's our key argument, frankly, in history. Yes, sir.
Of course, I don't approve of that, but isn't that a cynical strategy on his part to make a large segment of the society dependent on government and in order, it's sort of a bribe for votes?
Well, look, I think there are lots of ways he'd like to make people dependent. I doubt very much if he wants to try to run for re-election with this level of unemployment. I mean, I think he is in enormous trouble. You can either be radical or you can be incompetent, but you can't be both. and he's, you know, I mean, if you were radical but competent, we'd probably tolerate him. And much like Carter, I always tell people, without Carter, you don't get Reagan. Without Reagan, you don't defeat the Soviet Empire. So in a bizarre way, you owe Jimmy Carter a vote of gratitude for having defeated the Soviet Empire. I would say that if Obama weren't both simultaneously so radical and so incompetent, we would not have the election we're about to have. But this will be, I believe, the first fundamentally realigning election since 1932.
Oh, yeah.
And it'll be because the country's going to look up and go, no, we're not doing that. I mean, all you have to say to people is, you really want 4 more years of this? And I think you start seeing numbers that pile up. Yes, ma'am.
Wouldn't the best be, though, that we continue to climb in an upward pattern because of the education of our children and all that goes with it, and so that you don't have to fall back into those things like the Carter and...
Oh, look, it would be fabulous if life could be a permanently upward spiral. On the other hand, every generation seems to have to learn certain lessons, to be reminded that the world is dangerous, to be reminded that the work ethic matters. You know, and it just seems to be human nature. We come back and test these things over and over. Yes, ma'am.
One thing I read about you, I might have been a month ago now or so, that one of your ideas for cleaning up waste and fraud in government is the employment of the Lean Six Sigma strategy.
Yes, ma'am.
And I'm a freelance writer. I've had to write about that, and I know what that is. But a lot of the people that I talk to have no clue. Could you, in 3 sentences, explain what Lean Six Sigma is all
Sure.
about?
You know, you also remind me of something that I'm just going to share with you all for a minute, because I think you'll find it interesting, and you all have been so generous to come here tonight. I was thinking about this the other day because I was trying to explain to our campaign team that I'm prepared to make certain speeches that are hard to understand. And they were saying, I have a whole idea, for example, about brain science, that is so new and so different and affects Alzheimer's and autism and Parkinson's and mental health and all these things. But it's not anything people are used to, just as very few people are used to Lean Six Sigma. And we were talking about it, and what came to mind many, many years ago, I read and I will confess, I read only the opening of The Once and Future King, which is a beautifully written novel about Arthur. King Arthur. And it has Arthur as a very young man standing down here about this tall, between 2 adults who are talking. And White, the author, describes Arthur as jumping up every once in a while and grabbing a really big word and trying to figure out what these adults are talking about. I always thought it was a wonderful, vivid phrasing of stretching to learn. The most effective president at the use of language in American history is Abraham Lincoln. His speeches are extraordinary if you read them. In running for president, he goes to Cooper Union in February of 1860. And he is personally, now think about this compared to our modern consultant-driven, talking point model. He has personally spent 3 months at the law library in Springfield doing research. He has personally written a 7,200-word speech. It takes 2 hours to get. Because he gives it slowly, because he stops so you can catch up with it. Because he understands if he gives it fast, you won't know what he said. And he's building a case. Now, the reason I cite this is the following. If you go to newt.org and you look at the contract, the 21st century contract, there are 3 or 4 sections that are really dramatic. But the press doesn't quite get it yet because they're so new. They don't understand the drama. And my speech Friday will be an example of this, because it's going to reset the judiciary in its constitutional limits in a decisive way. Nobody's done it in 60 years. I'm going to Lean Six Sigma. I'm going to work backwards. I was at the Boeing plant. Listen, I went to the Boeing plant about a month ago. Lean Six Sigma is essentially just a model of management.
Yeah.
It combines the idea of being as efficient as you can be and as accurate as you can be. Six Sigma is 0.99999. It means you only have 1 error out of that many. Okay, and Lean is a system that grew up out of Toyota and was popularized by a guy named Womack in this country.